It's a crucial passage for oil and gas. Closing it could wreck the world's economy. But this is not the Strait of Hormuz.
This is Taiwan's border. This is not your water.
The Taiwan Strait separates the island from its giant adversary, China.
You don't belong here. Turn around and leave now.
There are signs China wants to copy Iran's blockade to pressure Taiwan.
They've been simulating potential blockade. How to do a blockade, especially targeted at the 3 major ports of Taiwan.
Beijing has always claimed Taiwan as part of its territory, with Taiwanese facing down China's threats for generations. But this time they have to worry that a war-weary US might not come to their aid.
I think the last thing we need right now is a war. That's 9,500 miles away. I think that's the last thing we need.
Donald Trump simply can't be trusted. He's a businessman, and that's what he cares about. Making deals, and Taiwan might be up for grabs too.
Hello, I'm Eric Campbell in Taiwan for 101 East. The Trump presidency has cast a shadow over Asia, undermining decades of security assumptions. And nowhere is that uncertainty felt more keenly than here, where Taiwanese have long looked to America to stop a threatened Chinese invasion. Is the long-feared war with China coming closer, and could Taiwan defend itself on its own? For 10 weeks, Taiwanese watched in horror and fascination as China cut off their island.
中国以搜救为名封锁了台湾海域。
A trumped-up excuse to police the Taiwan Strait turned into a de facto blockade. It suffocated Taiwan's economy as China demanded its surrender.
So we have 40 minutes.
Fortunately for Taiwan, it was fiction. A mini-series called Zero-Day Attack portraying a Chinese invasion. The government supported the production to remind citizens that war could be a reality.
Of course, we're learning from Ukraine, many lessons.
Taiwan's vice president is Bi-khim.
Well, the intention to take Taiwan is no secret. We hear that a lot. And I think the problematic aspect is their stated intention to use force. And indeed, they have been methodically preparing for those capabilities. And some people have even projected 2027 as a timeline.
Have Taiwanese grown complacent about the threat of war after 77 years of threats?
Well, that's a very sad reality that we have to face. That is, the Chinese threats have become a daily reality for the Taiwanese people. But I don't think we have the option of being complacent.
When I was in high school, we have shooting class. Yeah.
Xin-Mei Chang is a former journalist who wrote and produced Zero-Day Attack, and still has some of the props in her production office.
Everyone have to practice. Preparing for the coming war in our high school.
After China crushed Hong Kong's autonomy in 2021, she feared Taiwan could be next.
I have seen the film industry was dead in Hong Kong because they have no freedom of speech, they have no freedom of creation. So I was afraid if one day we were ruling by communists, so maybe Taiwan would become Hong Kong, and we have no any chance to talk about this kind of story anymore. So I think I should try my best to tell about this.
So you wanted Zero-Day Attack almost didn't happen. No Taiwanese drama had ever portrayed an invasion for fear of angering China.
Every investor say no to me.
Because they were scared of losing the Chinese market?
Yeah, losing the Chinese market, but also they think this is too sensitive. So they told me, maybe you can think about remove China or remove Taiwan. This is a good story. But
so make it about an invasion, but not name which country is doing it.
Yeah, maybe country A or country B, something like that. and that would make things easier. I think, well, that's weird.
Salvation came from a rich and fiercely anti-communist benefactor.
They care only about power and privilege.
Robert Tsao made more than $1 billion selling Taiwan's main export, semiconductors. He no longer has to worry about losing business with China.
I'm now retired, so I introduce myself as jobless.
He gave the production the start-up money it needed, hoping it would encourage civilians to prepare for war.
The people have to determine to fight. So that's what I've been trying to help. Zero-day movie, that's a kind of a wake-up call, yeah.
The series, released in August 2025, began with a maritime blockade, where at first Taiwan wasn't even sure it was under attack.
I'm doing a lot of research, and I interview a lot of specialists, and they told me they would not just come to stay in, and they will try to make the war something like gray zone.
Grey zone tactics are hostile acts that fall just short of war. And China has spent the past decade honing them in the South China Sea. Its Coast Guard, Navy and militarized fishing ships have blocked and attacked vessels approaching so-called Chinese territory. Even underwater reefs thousands of kilometers from the mainland.
You are violating China's territorial airspace. Leave now. Leave immediately.
Well, right now we're being shadowed by a Chinese helicopter. In February 2025, an Al Jazeera crew, including this reporter, was flying over a reef that China seized from the Philippines when a military helicopter almost crashed into our plane.
Oh my God! Chinese military helicopter. You are flying too close. You are very dangerous and endangers the life of our crew and passengers.
China has begun using similar tactics in the Taiwan Strait, sailing close to Taiwan shore, asserting it is Chinese sovereign territory.
香拉 Coast Guard， 你们未经许可进入我国水域，已违反国际法规定。
我们拍的时候，我们有上军舰，登上军舰去拍摄。我也跟船上、军舰上的这个舰长或者是这海军们有聊过，他们说，其实在这3年来，这是他们最累的时候。他说，这个都可能台湾岛内的民众并没有意识到这件事情，但是他们身为第一线的海军是有意识到。中国对台湾的侵扰是一步一步慢慢的紧逼了。
台海和平攸关全球经济稳定及科技产业的命脉，一旦发生冲突，你们将会受到世界的制裁。
China has not blocked cargo ships, but Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has reinforced how damaging that could be.
Bloomberg Economics did a modeling which estimated over $10 trillion in global economic losses if a conflict over the Taiwan Strait should occur. They've also estimated a reduction in global GDP by 9.6%. And that would be, I think, one of the most significant economic disruptions in recent history, far beyond the conflict in the Middle East or in Europe.
With the disintegration of the nationalist army, China could no longer be counted among the democratic nations.
This conflict has been brewing since the communist takeover of China, when the nationalist government, led by Chiang Kai-shek, fled to Taiwan, a former province of Imperial China that had been a Japanese colony until the end of World War II.
Beginning in December 1949, on his island sanctuary, Jiang worked toward the day when China could be freed from the communist yoke. He had the support of the United States.
Chiang Kai-shek imposed a brutal dictatorship, massacring tens of thousands of opponents. But over the decades, his nationalist party, the KMT, gave up the fantasy of retaking the mainland. In the early 1990s, dictatorship gave way to full democracy. While some older people continue to see themselves as Chinese, most people here identify as Taiwanese.
When you look at polling, Taiwanese identity is on the rise, Chinese identity is in decline, mutual identity is also in decline. And then you look at people like me, for example, third generation family came with the KMT and identifying as Taiwanese and not Chinese. So that's also on the rise.
Author and commentator Brian Hugh is a leading light in Taiwan's intellectual set, running an art cafe and hosting political salons. While Taiwanese have never been ruled by the Chinese Communist Party, he says people don't want to risk China's wrath by declaring formal independence.
I think people don't want war and they want things to stay as is currently. People do overwhelmingly prefer the status quo.
But China has never given up the idea of taking Taiwan.
台湾是中国领土不可分割的一部分，这是在政治上和法理上共同锁定的铁一般的事实。
It increasingly flies fighter jets around the island, fires missiles overhead, and sends warships over the median line of the strait. China also punishes the few countries that recognize Taiwan's sovereignty. In his New Year's address, President Xi Jinping declared resistance to be futile.
两岸同胞血浓于水，祖国统一的历史大势不可阻挡。
Taiwan's Deputy Foreign Minister Francois Wu suspects it's the first thing Xi thinks of every morning.
I don't know Xi Jinping, I never met him, but every day when he wake up, when he's shaving, certainly in his mind he's thinking about, okay, I want to conquer Taiwan, I want to be the greatest emperor of China.
The Iran war showed how vulnerable Taiwan is to a fuel blockade.
80% of our electricity generated by imported fuels. That includes the imported coal and gas.
Taiyang Lu is an energy analyst with the national think tank DSET.
Now, because of the Strait of Hormuz crisis, 1/3 of our LNG were actually imported from Qatar. So that means 33.7% of that gas shortage needed to be supplemented by other sourced LNG.
In a full blockade, Taiwan would run down its stockpile within weeks.
Taiwan can survive 46 days, even months, if we're counting even further, like power rationing measures or something.
But it's a pretty tight deadline, isn't it? If there was a serious blockade, you would run out of power.
We will face shortage issues, of course, because of the blockade.
So, where does all this leave Taiwan now? Well, today I'm going to meet a former commander of the Taiwanese Navy, Admiral Chen. Now, he's never spoken to foreign television before, so I'm curious to hear what he has to say about a Chinese blockade.
Eric
Campbell.
Welcome to the legislature.
Admiral Chen Yong-kun spent 40 years in the Navy and is credited with modernizing Taiwan's fleet. For him, the challenge is not just preparing for war. He says Taiwan has to play a complex game of weaponry, politics, diplomacy and alliances, all while being in diplomatic limbo.
We're not on the negotiation table. We're under the table, but play the important role as a pivot point to make the table stable.
And has Donald Trump changed the game?
Yes, he changed the rule of the game, but depends on the three sides how to play to adjust our self-position.
In December 2025, China rehearsed a full island blockade, sending a record number of ships across the strait and to Taiwan's east.
This is Justice Mission 2025. This is all the area they conduct exercise.
So they actually rehearsed surrounding Taiwan?
Yes, surrounding Taiwan. Yeah.
But Admiral Chen doesn't believe China could sustain a blockade on a waterway as large as the Taiwan Strait.
Because the Strait of Hormuz is narrow. The Taiwan Strait is much wider, and Taiwan, as an island nation, we have different port, different directions.
He believes that far more likely China would impose a quarantine, selectively stopping ships carrying fuel to Taiwan.
Get on board a ship to force them change the direction instead of blockade. Blockade is a major conflict to all the neighboring countries.
So they could start with something on a lower scale.
Yes.
To put economic pressure on Taiwan.
Yes. This is one of the possible choice.
And then Taiwan's energy would be used up.
Major impact.
He believes Taiwan could hold out on its own for several weeks.
I think the first wave, second wave, third wave, no problem. But we cannot sustain it. Their force structure 10 times bigger than Taiwan. Their annual defense budget 17 times higher than Taiwan.
Taiwan's fate would ultimately depend on support from its allies. But Donald Trump's praise for the man threatening to invade Taiwan has raised questions about how much support he'd give.
I have such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody, you're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true.
At this summit in Beijing, he remained silent when Xi Jinping warned him not to stand in China's way over Taiwan. Trump even mooted cutting arms sales to Taiwan in return for better deals with China.
So we're using some AI technology to analyze their position, their attitude, confidence, sitting posture.
So your analysis of the summit was that Xi Jinping was the boss?
Yes.
Weeks later, China declared that it controlled Taiwan's coastal waters, the China Coast Guard demanding ships' identification. Taiwan's Coast Guard told them to ignore it.
Maintain your normal navigation. There is no need to respond to broadcasts of Chinese government vessels.
So potentially, they can do law enforcement at sea, threatening, we will board your ship and do inspection to see whether you got approval from the Fujian Maritime Bureau to sail through the Taiwan
That's
Strait.
in mainland China.
Yeah. So they've been simulating to practice how exactly they can do that kind of legal enforcement.
How concerned are you that China is looking at the lessons of the Iran war and planning perhaps to stop ships bound for Taiwan, perhaps under the guise of law enforcement, to try to force you to surrender?
Well, this is another area of increasing activities, and it's also a serious concern. We take it seriously, and the Chinese have tried to use all kinds of claims that are not substantiated by international law to justify their aggressive military, but also non-military Coast Guard and other areas of action and coercion in this vicinity.
China's military drills have been condemned by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. But Donald Trump has made clear he calls the shots.
Would the US defend Taiwan if it came to it? I don't want to say that. I'm not going to say that. There's only one person that knows that. You know who it is? Me. I'm the only person.
Well, we've heard from American officials repeatedly that policy towards Taiwan has not changed, and that has endured for several decades. Now, President Trump talks about, he wants to be a president of peace, and I think we share a vision that this region has to be peaceful and stable.
So, do you trust Donald Trump to militarily defend Taiwan if there were an attack?
Well, I think that is a hypothetical question to militarily defend. I think there is a lot that we are doing to prevent certain scenarios from happening, and a lot of details that generally we don't talk about in public, but we do have a shared vision, and that is a vision of stability in the region, a vision that the status quo can be preserved.
I think people do react to this question, is the U.S. as reliable as it was in the past? And Trump is rather open that everything is up for negotiation and he doesn't really care about Taiwan in that sense. I think people feel that.
The government can't say that, though, can they? Even if they believe it, they have to maintain that the US is a reliable partner.
That's the difficulty, I think, and I think it's not always persuasive of the public.
Even so, not everyone is fazed by Donald Trump's aversion to joining another war.
I think Donald Trump's comment is quite fair. Why should Americans fight for us? We have fight for ourselves. right? But they have to provide assistance. They have to sell our weapons, right? So I don't mind what Trump says, but I hope the Taiwanese can wake up. You have to protect your country. Yeah, you have to protect your business. So,
do you think Taiwan could defend itself on its own?
I think Taiwan should be in a much stronger position than Ukraine.
Robert Tsao has also set up an academy to train civilians in wartime survival skills and battlefield first aid. It's part of a government policy to engage the whole of society in defending Taiwan. Enrolments in self-defense classes have soared since the screening of zero-day attack.
It is quite striking. I think it's not necessarily preparing to fight, but thinking about these defense-related topics or how to do first aid or disaster relief. Civil defense is a rising trend. There's much more discussion of drones. I go to every family dinner and I find more cousins have actually participated in civil defense, and that's quite a surprising trend. Is it everyone's society? Yeah, I don't think so, but it is more and more people, and I think that is quite telling.
And it's not just young people. Every Sunday, the forests around the capital, Taipei, fill with middle-aged men wearing camouflage and eye protection, shooting airsoft pellets. Anyone who is hit has to exit the game. Now, for a lot of weekend warriors, this is just sport. But for many Taiwanese, it's something far more serious. These are men who did compulsory military training when they were 18, and now in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s, they are refreshing and honing those skills in case war comes. Simon Huang is 65. So, Simon, if China invaded, would you fight?
Yes, of course. 绝对的。这个是我的国家，这个是台湾，不是大陆。
Do you think the war would be over in a few battles, or do you think China would have to fight street by street, village by village?
那肯定一定要城市战的，我们是不会投降的。
For all the current uncertainty, some are confident it will never come to this. China is facing its own battles: a sluggish economy, global trade tensions, and political turmoil that has seen President Xi purge his most senior military commanders. Francois Wu hopes that's the second thing Xi thinks of while he's shaving.
We need to let him believe that at the end of the day, today is not a good day. I think we form this kind of a not today policy, and we can deter the ambition of China, especially the President of China, Xi Jinping.
China's foreign ministry did not respond to claims raised in this program, including that China has been rehearsing a de facto blockade. Some analysts now see 2032 as a more likely year for attack, by which time there could be a very different administration in the White House.
2027, the chances are very low. But we can see after Trump's, who will be the next president of the United States, and whether Xi Jinping will maintain in the power for another 5 years. So 32 to 35 is another critical time.
But there's one lesson from Ukraine that makes war impossible to predict. When powers are led by strong men, only one man decides when to fight.
As you have power more and more in the hands of one man, his decision-making is increasingly irrational. The party is not a democracy, but 20 heads are still better than one head. And so as you just have one person with all of the power, that can be more and more dangerous. And so looking at his military purges, his purges of the senior leaders, that there's no clear successor, that is concerning.
And so Taiwan's uncertain wait continues. People grapple with leading normal lives while being encouraged to keep an eye out for war. What's clear is that the contest for Taiwan shows no sign of ending, and that China will keep squeezing this island of democracy across a troubled strait.